How could you possibly do this to me? You can't just take over our $30 million property. This is outrageous. No polite letter arrived telling me the HOA had grand plans. What I got instead were tremors under my boots, clouds of dust rolling across my fields, and a confused phone call asking why heavy machinery was tearing into the edge of my farm, as if it were common ground. Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe for your premium dose of HOA chaos. My farm wraps around that neighborhood in a way that clearly unsettles them. It's not a tidy square outlined on a plat map. It's a series of adjoining parcels, some cultivated, some resting between seasons, all properly deeded, surveyed, fenced, and taxed year after year without exception. I wasn't staying there at the time. I was managing work on another property because agriculture doesn't pause simply because you're sleeping somewhere else. Fields still rotate, equipment still moves, business continues. The strip the HOA kept referring to as community land was actually a parcel that had been misplotted years ago but had always belonged to my farm. To them, it looked empty and forgotten. To me, it was rotation acreage, buffer ground, and space reserved for future growth. To Karen, it looked like opportunity dressed up as dirt. The first hints didn't seem alarming. Survey flags. Minor grading. Trucks are driving through. I sent a composed email introducing myself as the owner and requesting copies of any surveys or recorded easements before permanent work began. Apparently, that was amusing. Karen's reply came quickly, confident, dismissive, and completely uninterested in specifics. She insisted the HOA had authorization. The land, she claimed, was marked as community space, and I needn't worry about it. No survey attached, no easement provided, just the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to others backing off. A few days later, I drove out to see for myself. The boundary stakes had vanished. Fresh grading sliced clean across my parcel. Stacks of concrete forms sat exactly where my fence line used to run. My next message was firmer. I warned them to halt construction immediately or risk trespassing liability. They didn't stop. They poured. And when steel beams began rising from soil they had never owned, I shifted strategies. I stopped cautioning them and started recording everything: photographs, timestamps, emails, and meeting notes. I wasn't trying to shut them down anymore. I was letting them complete the error because arrogance carries a price tag, and concrete has a remarkable memory for where it's set. That's when I understood something important. Patience would cut deeper than shouting, lawsuits, or threats ever could. I smiled to myself. Before we go further, drop a comment telling us what city or country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. By the time I ended my emails, the HOA had interpreted my silence as defeat. They always do. Construction didn't slow. It accelerated as if confidence itself had been poured into the timeline. Steel frameworks climbed higher. Glass panels followed. Before long, my acreage was hosting what they proudly called a private, resort-style community clubhouse. Banners hung exactly where my fence once stood. Karen gave statements with a hard hat perched neatly on her head and a clipboard tucked beneath her arm, smiling as though she'd personally mixed the mortar. She spoke about rising property values, shared vision, and unused land finally fulfilling its destiny. That unused land, of course, is by mine. It seems that if you declare something boldly enough, ownership becomes optional. By then, I'd already consulted an attorney. His advice was straightforward: document everything, avoid interference, and allow them to correct their mistake. So I went silent. No more objections, no more reminders. While the HOA celebrated, I observed. A neighbor discreetly sent me copies of the meeting minutes. Some board members had raised concerns, questions about boundaries, suggestions from their lawyer to pause until the matter was clarified. Karen dismissed it immediately. Halting now, she argued, would damage appearances. The board voted to proceed. The structure went up quickly. $30 million worth of concrete, steel, electrical work, and imported finishes anchored permanently into my soil. Soon they were marketing weddings, executive retreats, corporate gatherings, branding it private, while quietly accepting deposits from anyone ready to write a check. Revenue began pouring in. And with every dollar came more confidence. Then came the big reveal, the ribbon cutting. Local officials were invited. Residents were told to dress their best. Karen blasted out a neighborhood email praising the project as a victory over outside interference and so-called baseless accusations. I read that email carefully, twice. Then I saved it. Opening night arrived with music thumping, lights blazing, and traffic pouring across my fields. Vehicles packed the underground garage. Laughter carried through the air where cattle once moved calmly through the pasture. And as I stood there in the dark, watching them toast a building they never legally owned, I felt only one thing. Calm. The shutdown didn't explode onto the scene with sirens or raised voices. It came quietly, through filings, certified paperwork, a formal survey, and a judge who took the time to read every email the HOA had ignored and every warning they'd brushed aside. The surveyor didn't speculate or dramatize. He walked the parcel with county records, calibrated GPS equipment, and original iron boundary pins. His report stated plainly and without flourish what I already knew. The entire structure stood on my land, not partially, not by accident, 100% of it, no easement, no permission. No gray area. I filed a single motion covering quiet title, trespass, and unjust enrichment. The court responded with an emergency injunction pending review. Overnight, the so-called resort went dark. Events were canceled, deposits frozen, security instructed to stand down. Residents showed up to locked doors and posted notices, staring at a building they'd been assured was theirs, until suddenly it was. Karen went into overdrive, emergency meetings, lengthy emails. Blame sprayed in every direction, contractors, surveyors, the city, even me. She fined me again for trespassing when I stood on the gravel drive watching employees remove equipment. I paid the fine. Scanned it, added it to the evidence file. Discovery was ruthless. Board minutes surfaced. Emails surfaced. My original warning was summarized and dismissed. Their own attorney's recommendation to pause construction was overruled in the same paragraph. One email sealed everything. Worst case, we negotiate later. The judge read that line twice. At the hearing, the HOA argued it was all a mistake. The judge asked a simple question: why did construction continue after notice was given? Silence answered for them. The ruling was clear: willful trespass and bad faith construction. Use of the property remained prohibited. Revenue records were ordered to be disclosed, and accounting became unavoidable. Residents turned on the board. Vendors demanded payment. Insurance companies denied coverage. Lenders requested immediate explanations. Karen resigned before the vote to remove her. Then she claimed she hadn't. Then she stopped returning calls altogether. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't about applause. It was about securing the record so thoroughly that the next court order could only move in one direction. Ownership didn't arrive with cheers. It arrived in a plainly typed order that stripped all drama from $30 million of misplaced confidence. The court quieted title in my name and declared every improvement attached to the land a fixture belonging to the landowner. The HOA's luxury clubhouse changed hands without shifting a single inch. The consequences unfolded predictably. The association was ordered to disgorge profits, cover my legal fees, and maintain the property until formal transfer. Insurance refused coverage. Credit lines froze. Vendors lined up. Karen was removed by emergency vote and later named individually for approving construction after notice. Her final email promised transparency. It delivered silence. I changed the locks the afternoon the judgment was posted. Access badges stopped working. Calendars cleared instantly. Residents gathered at the gates, reading notices announcing operations were suspended pending my decision. Some yelled. Some apologized. Most simply stared, finally realizing that maps matter. I didn't tear the building down. I leased it back under terms designed to eliminate arrogance. Market rate rent, mandatory audits, personal guarantees, compliance inspections, they signed. Because the alternative was bankruptcy. Payments began arriving on time each month without speeches or ribbon cuttings. Around the structure, my farm settled back into a quiet rhythm. Fences repaired. Soil tested. Cattle moving through as though nothing unusual had happened, except something had. A lesson poured into concrete where shortcuts once stood. City departments reopened files. Permits were corrected, penalties assessed, refunds processed, audits completed. The board learned what ownership truly means when confidence collides with a deed, a survey, and a calendar. Records remained, memory lingered, neighbors learned patience, lenders learned boundaries, and the board learned silence because documents speak louder than meetings, threats, or votes. Paper remembers everything. Confidence fades quickly once court orders, timelines, and signatures replace public shouting in permanent records. People asked if I felt sorry for them. I said no. I warned them twice. They built anyway. They spent $30 million proving something simple. If you build on my land, you build for me. The end.